Alright, let's start with a quick review. Here's a problem that we definitely have already done, and it's an easy version of that problem. I'm going to go quick. Just going to factor this. X minus 6, x plus 4 equals 0. Set each of them equal to 0. And solve. Piece of cake. Done. Those are the two answers to that problem. Alright, but what if, this looks sort of like the same type of problem again. We have this and it equals 0 again. Everything looks sort of the same. But if you were to try to factor this, it looks simple enough, right? You'd put x times x here. The only things that could make 3 is 3 and 1, so you could put a 1 and a 3 here. And you immediately look at that and realize that there's no way I'm going to make a 7 out of this thing. Or in other words, this does not factor. Not everything factors. Everything has been factoring for us, but not anymore. Today's lesson is how to solve a quadratic equation, this equation right here, how to solve that when it doesn't factor. The first way we're going to learn how to do that, and I would say probably the simplest way to do this, is there's just a formula. It's called the quadratic formula. And as we move along in this unit, I'll show you where this comes from. Today, all I need you to do is be able to use it. Okay, we have the quadratic formula. And if we have an equation that's in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. In other words, the a, the b, and the c are just representing the numbers that are in front of the x squared, the x, and then the c is just the constant over here, or the number without a variable. And we have this equation right here is in that form. You know, it's got something x squared plus something x plus something, where a, b, and c are those somethings. Okay. Then in our problem, we're going to go from here. We're looking at this problem down here. A is 1, B is -7, and C is +3. Now I'm going to give you, this is not the quadratic formula yet. The quadratic formula is coming up. We're going to take those three numbers, A, B, and C, and we're going to plug them into this formula. And the formula is that x will equal -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It's a very famous formula, and it's the magical way to solve any quadratic equation. Any squared equation can be solved by just plugging the numbers into this formula. And I know it looks a little complicated, but really it's not, because all you're doing is plugging numbers into it. We're not solving any equations or anything. We're gonna solve the equation by just plugging numbers into a formula. So here we go. I just rewrote everything so I had some space to work with. And here's the equation. Here is the a, b, and c for that equation, and this is the quadratic formula right here. And now let's put it all together. It's going to go like this. X equals -7 plus or minus square root -7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 3 all over 2 times 1. Stare at that. Maybe this is a time where you would put this on pause if you're at home working on this, and just kind of make sure you understand where all those numbers went. This is a b. B is -7, so I put the -7 where that b is. Then the b shows up right here again, so I put -7 there. Then there's an a, that's 1. C, 3. A, 1. That's all I did. I just put all those numbers in. You know, if there's anything tricky about this, it's this next step where you have to clean it all up and get the answers. So negative negative 7 is positive 7, plus or minus square root. Negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49, minus 12 all over 2. So already it looks a little better. Let's keep going. X equals 7 plus or minus square root. 49 minus 12, I believe, is 37, and then over 2. That's it. That's the best we can do with that problem without just going on a calculator and getting a decimal answer. I don't care about the decimal answer. I just care that if we wanted the decimal answer, we could get it right now. But we're good with that. A couple things to talk about. Number one, remember that there's always two answers to these problems. Whatever the power of an equation is, highest power, that's how many answers we have. Well, this is two answers built into one thing. It's plus or minus. That means that the answers are 7 plus square root of 37 all divided by 2, or 7 minus square root of 37 divided by 2. But instead of having to write that all out separately, we just use this little plus or minus symbol to do that. All right, let's do it again. There's not a whole lot I can do to make this more difficult, but there's some things we need to talk about. Number one is to solve using quadratic formula or even factoring. We can't have numbers over here. This has to be 0. It has to be equal to 0. So that 5 is no good for us. Okay, so we're gonna move that over to the other side. We're gonna go 3x squared minus 4x minus 5 equals 0. So I'm subtracting 5 from both sides, moving this 5 over to the other side and calling it negative 5, like that. Okay. Now we're back to that same format that we've been doing, where A equals 3, B equals negative 4, and C equals negative 5. Once again, the quadratic formula is that x will equal negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. It's pretty famous. Okay, look up, you Google quadratic formula, that's what you're going to see every time, is that formula. All right, so for this problem, x equals negative 4 plus or minus square root negative 4 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 5 all over 2 times 3. That's just plugging numbers in a formula, nothing to it. Okay, the only part that requires a little bit of skill is cleaning this problem up. So a negative and a negative make positive 4, plus or minus square root negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. Then we have, let's look at this closely, we have a minus here, but we also have a negative here. So it's really going to be two negatives, and that's going to be a plus. So really all we need to do here is go plus, and then just multiply all those numbers together. 4 times 3 is 12, 12 times 5 is 60. And then it's all over 2 times 3, which is 6. Really all we need to do now is go x equals 4 plus or minus square root 76 over 6. Good enough. Good answer right there. Like I said, you could get the square root of 76. That would be some decimal answer. Then you could go 4 plus the decimal divided by 6. And you could do 4 minus the decimal divided by 6. And you'll get two just regular decimal answers. But this is an exact answer, meaning it's not rounded in any way. If somebody else wanted to take that answer right here and make a decimal, they'd be able to get as many decimal points as they wanted for that problem. Where if you do the decimal, you're going to round it somewhere, and then who knows, maybe somebody wanted more decimal places than that. So these are always the best answers. This is called the exact answer, because it's not rounded in any way. It's ready to have somebody do whatever they want with that answer. Now I could keep doing these. I mean, they're all pretty much the same as long as you have it in this format. This is your A, this is your B, this is your C, and you plug them into the formula and you get your answers. So if you're struggling with that at all, just go, pause the video, go look at some other problems, and you can, go through them a little slower. But that being said, I want to talk about one more thing. Okay. So this time we're not going to actually solve the problem. We're going to quickly figure out how many answers the problem would have. It's either going to be every quadratic has two answers. Because remember, we talked about whatever the power of the equation is the number of answers a problem has. So this will have two answers. And we've been seeing that over and over with factoring, with the formula we just did. There's two answers. But sometimes there's going to be two, we'll just call it two real answers. We could have two imaginary answers. Or we could have two answers that are the exact same answer. In that case, that's kind of like having one answer. Or we should say one real answer. Okay? These are the three things that can happen. And I'm going to use this example right here to show you just how to quickly know if it has two real, two imaginary, or just one real. It really doesn't have one, it just means it has two the same. But I'll get to that. I'll show you how that works. So let's start with this one. So what it all is based on is you have your quadratic formula, which is this. But what we're going to focus on right now is just the inside of the square root of the quadratic formula. That's called the discriminant. Discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So instead of doing the whole problem, if we just want to take the a, b, and c from this problem, here's a, there's b, there's c, and just quickly plug it in here, what we're going to find out is what the number is inside of the square root, because this came from the square root here. Okay, so we're going to quickly find out what the number would be inside of there, and that's going to tell us some stuff. It's not going to give us the whole answer, but it's going to tell us something quickly. So let's do that. That would be, for this problem, the discriminant would be negative 6 squared minus 4 times negative 5 times 4. And that equals 36 plus 80, which is some number, 116. Okay, I don't really care what that number is right now because I'm not trying to find the answer. But if that number is positive, which it is here, then it's a normal problem. It's just going to have two normal answers. So if b squared minus 4ac is positive or bigger than 0, then two real answers. That's all we've seen so far. We haven't seen anything other than that on the couple of examples I did. Here's a different example. Once again, we're just going to focus on b squared minus 4ac, and we just want to know what kind of answers we have. And so for this one, that would be negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4. And in this case, you'll get 16 minus 16, which equals 0. That means if inside the square root, if we had the whole problem here, negative b plus or minus square root, the inside of the square root would be 0 all over 2a. Even though we didn't even bother figuring out the rest of the problem here, we know that this would be 0 right here. And the square, because b squared minus 4ac is the inside of the square root of the quadratic formula. If that's 0, then you're just going negative b plus 0 and negative b minus 0. because the square root of 0 is still 0. Negative b plus 0, negative p minus 0 is the same thing. It doesn't, adding 0 or subtracting 0 isn't actually going to give you two different answers. So if b squared minus 4ac equals 0, then you just have one real answer. Like I said earlier, you have two. They're just the same. Because adding 0 and subtracting 0 isn't going to change anything. Any other number you put here, when you add that number or you subtract that number, it's different, but not with 0. So that's why with discriminant being 0, then there's only one real answer. And the final option here for discriminant, once again, discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So for this problem, that would be 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 7. That would be 9 minus 28. Now we have negative. We have negative 19 here. So now our discriminant is a negative number. If b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, like in this case, less than 0 meaning negative, then there's no real answers. And that comes from the fact that you'd have negative b plus or minus, this is the formula, quadratic formula, and now you've got a negative inside the square root. Because remember, this b squared minus 4ac is the inside of the square root of the quadratic formula. If that number is negative, well, that leads to imaginary numbers. Remember, the square root of a negative number, in this case, this is right there, it was negative 19, right? I don't even care about the bottom here. All I'm focusing on is that this number inside the square root is negative. If that number is negative, you don't have real answers. You're going to have imaginary answers, but for now, we're not focused on that. We're focused on that they're not real. And we've kind of stopped there. Let's summarize that. So one more time, I'm going to make one. All right, so the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. That is the discriminant. And the rule is if b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, you have two real answers. If b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, you have two imaginary answers, or not real, or however you want to say that. And if b squared minus 4ac equals 0, you have one real answer. Hopefully you can go back, if you don't remember why that is the way it is, you can go back and watch the demonstration. And then, while we're at it here, let's just put up in one slide here the quadratic formula, which this is how you actually find your answers. The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that will solve and give you your x values. And it's all, the reason we get two of them is all about that plus or minus. All right, I hope this helps. Good luck on the homework, and once again, I'll see you soon.